In the EU, officials held a meeting to discuss enforcement of the DSA, or Digital Services Act. For some background here, the EU's Digital Services Act updated the EU's Electronic Commerce Directive of 2000, which was inspired by Section 230 here in the US, common carrier laws, where the common carriers, be those AOL, Yahoo, Google, Facebook, are not responsible for what individuals post on their platforms. And so that protection's been critically important, not making social media sites or WordPress into editors or having them have to censor content on their platform. So the DSA officially went into effect in August of this year. The main goal was to, quote unquote, foster safer online environments. The DSA aims to do that via tighter rules around disinformation, illegal content, and transparent advertising. The DSA has been called a new constitution of the internet in an effort to shape the future of the online world. Some things the DSA covers. It forces VLOPs, a new term, very large online platforms, to disclose how their algorithms work. They must give users the right to opt out of recommendation systems and profiling. They must share key data with researchers and authorities. They must cooperate with crisis response requirements, and they must perform external and internal audits. They want to force transparency on how content moderation decisions are made. That seems logical. They want to force transparency on the ways advertising is targeted. That also seems reasonable.
My thoughts are that the era of the open internet as a decentralized technology platform for the benefit of individuals and not to be overseen and run by governments is over. The Digital Services Act, I think, is one of the most overreaching threats to any sort of open, transparent, democratic opportunity on the internet. The idea of the open internet, the idea of creating a network of computers that could share information and make services available to individuals around the world freely, uncensored, and in an easy to access way was the reason that the internet has transformed society, improved productivity, and provided extraordinary benefits. The Digital Services Act is an example of a government seeing that a decentralized technology, the internet itself is meant to be a decentralized technology. There's no central servers. They are all part of a network of computers that anyone on the network can access anything else on the network. Blockchain, obviously, is the more modern kind of exciting, decentralized technology concept that is meant to avoid the scrutiny, the oversight, and the control by central governments or central authorities of any sort. And the language in the Digital Services Act, I think, got squeezed through in a way that most of the people that I'm guessing passed this Digital Services Act don't fully comprehend the implications of some of the decisions that they're making. It can be easily framed as this is good for people. You cannot sell illegal content online. You cannot sell illegal goods and services. We're trying to safeguard young people. But the protection of minors means that you can no longer do personalized web experiences for anyone under 18, which means you need to know the age of everyone. And now your web experience, if you're a kid, is not going to be personalized. The overreach gets even worse when they say we can now go in and run evaluations of the algorithms and allow open access to your data to third-party researchers to get into your systems and look at how you guys are running the services that you're offering on the internet. So not only are you no longer allowed to have an open internet where people can provide whatever services they want to provide, but if you're on the internet, you now have to make your service and the inside part of your service available for scrutiny by governments. And so you have...
And researchers. Who are these researchers? It sounds like a Stasi type thing.
The way it's written, it gives this commission as the primary regulator effectively a lot of leeway in deciding who, what, where, and how they can go into companies, go into individual servers, individual computers. I could run an individual company on my computer at home, and it gives this government the legal right in the EU to go into my computer and pull information out of my computer and scrutinize it and make decisions about what I'm doing and whether or not I'm compliant with whatever the Commission's enforcement standards are of that day. I mean, this is about as 1984 as you can get, and it's a real serious threat. I don't think people are recognizing the second and third order effects of what this is going to do over time to internet services, to the quality of experience we get on the internet, and to the role that government is now going to play in policing, scrutinizing, and providing restricted access to content and services for each individual that wants to use the internet.
But it's important to say, if you're a European, it'll just make Europe even more of a place you go to vacation and never to live.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we're not talking about America, right? We're talking about Europe.
This is all the changes that are going to happen inside of Google, which is going to affect more than just the EU users because of the requests and the demands of the EU. And so, the services that you are going to get around the world are going to be affected by this EU compliance regime, and it's going to be dynamic. It's a commission, basically a bunch of individuals that get to decide who, what, where, and how. That's going to create a really scary situation where a bunch of people who are going to have their own motivations, their own political leanings, their own objectives, they're going to be able to leverage their particular role in applying their particular biases to internet services.
We saw Canada do something similar, and Facebook's reaction
Google pulled out, yeah.
And Facebook's reaction was, we're not going to syndicate links. So I don't know. I would go back to another argument you make a lot, which I agree with, which is the free market will act rationally here. And if Google deprecates a bunch of features and or completely pulls out of Europe, that'll be the death knell for these kinds of decisions, because then other governments and other people will see the cost of trying to get this kind of control. I think the bigger issue in a moment like this is Europe has such a checkered past on these things, which is that they somehow try to find this moral high ground, and there is just this overreach and this quasi-central planning that just never works. And so if this is another example of it, I would encourage all for-profit companies to make the practical decision.
Oh, can you imagine Google's decision-making here? They've got thousands of employees in Europe. They make billions of dollars in revenue in the market. It's such a difficult situation to be in.
Not if what you're saying is true. Not if what you're saying is this is the threat of the internet. I think it'll be very easy for Larry and Sergey to say, cut it, move on.
No, Europe is too big a market for Google or any other major tech company to exit. There's just no way. What they're going to do is comply.
There won't be a market.
Well, hold on a second. What this new DSA rule does is apply penalties to social networks for not censoring what they call illegal speech, which is whatever speech they say it is. So Freeberg's right. There's going to be some sort of committee in Brussels that basically sends out takedown requests now to all these social networks.
Yeah, it's the DSA Commission. Yeah,
the DSA Commission. So
yeah.
Europe, again, is just too big an area not to serve. And then what could happen is that because it's easier for companies just to have one approach where they can, there is a risk that these same policies get applied in the US. That is what happened with privacy. Remember, Europe went first with GDPR, and then a lot of those regulations came to America. Now, the First Amendment may stand in the way here, but there is some risk that tech companies of their own accord decide that it's cheaper and easier to comply with the European regime everywhere than trying to parse their service in different markets. I'm just saying that's a risk.
But look, let me frame it in a different way, in an economic argument. Okay, so Europe is about 25 cents of every dollar of revenue that Google generates, okay? So if you think about that, that's, call it $60-odd billion a year, plus or minus, okay? So the question is, at what point is the cost of trying to get 60 billion so great that you say it's not worth the 60 billion? And my point is that there is an economic rational argument here for it. If it costs, for example, 10 or 20 billion dollars to implement this stuff, that's probably the efficient frontier, where when you factor in multiple compression and you factor in behavior change in Europe, which may actually degrade the 60 billion to 50 or 40, where you just throw your hands up and say, it's just not economically worth it. You've seen these actors make this trade-off in Canada. It's not totally unreasonable that they run a model to figure out the cost.
Maybe they just take the perspective that whenever this DSA commission sends us a takedown request, we're just going to do it instantly. Why wouldn't that just become the norm? In fact, I'm pretty sure that's what they'll do. The management at most of these companies, really at all of them, except for Elon, they don't really care. They have the same political biases.
Yeah,
they don't care about free speech, really. They're not founders. They don't care about free speech. Moreover, they have a lot of the same political biases that these
I'm not supporting the DSA.
Have.
All I'm saying is I think that economic rational actors will do the right thing here.
I think the most likely outcome is that tech companies will be craven and they'll fold and they'll just do whatever these EU commissioners want.
Which then could be an opportunity for, distributed blockchain you know,
Good luck with
serverless.
that.